what happens when you have an ex-entrepreneur, an ex-journalist, and an ex-consultant come together for a few drinks and fries, today's case, mangoes as well. Well, you have great conversations where everyone takes home something with them. Welcome to Friends, Drinks, and Fries, an unfiltered conversation about nearly all things under the sun. Welcoming you is Harish, Sumit, and me, Rohit. Join us for a fascinating conversation that enlightens others while it enlightens us.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Great.
Welcome everyone.
Yes.
And today we have a very heavy topic, don't we? I don't know how much. I don't know if anybody grasps what inflation is.
No, to begin with, some of our insights have come true. Let's begin there.
Like what?
Yeah. Come on, we've seen. I mean, from our first episode itself.
Okay.
From our first episode itself, some of our insights have come true, like the GST or
Should we name our podcast to Nostradamus speaking?
Two-person Nostradamus.
You know what? उस दिन हमने GST पे discussion की थी. It turns out that Arvind Datar and a couple of other I think Vikram Mehta, Arvind Datar, these guys came out with a paper in the Indian Public Policy Review about how to reform the GST system. By the way, so yeah, and Andy Mukherjee decided to cover it in a op-ed for Bloomberg. That paper.
So right from the very beginning, even before GST was rolled out, just briefly, simplification in terms of rates, in terms of slabs and all of that, there is nothing that has not been said before GST was rolled out that is currently being said. Just a regurgitation of the same things essentially. But in simplification, it seems is not in our bureaucratic blood, so it will remain as it is.
Well, coming back,
टैक्स कट दिया था ना बजट में, वो बजट का टैक्स कट का जो एक्सप्लेनेशन था, आई थिंक इट वाज 2020 या 2021, जिसमें वो 50 वर्ड की लाइन के लिए 500 वर्ड का कैसे इशू हुआ था. और उसके बाद लोग तब भी बोल रहे थे कहना क्या चाहते हो.
That was 2020.
And I had the privilege, misfortune, I don't know what you would say, but I had the privilege of covering or misfortune of covering budget 3-4 years for a business paper, 3-4 years in a row. So a reporter's nightmare would be the fine print that some other guy, some other paper might catch on to, or some other venture capitalist, some tax expert might catch and might tell some reporter that everybody else is completely clueless about. And there's no way you see the story next day and you're scratching your head, where was this in the budget report? And there's no way a journalist, even most analysts could have caught on to that, because of the language is so dense, so convoluted. So you might remember this instance in one budget, because I covered it so closely. It used to happen in every budget. There were things in the fine print that however many times you wanted to read, you could read it. You would not catch on to it. And somebody or the other would then, sometimes 2-3 days after the budget has been presented, something would come out. Oh, this was there in the budget. Nobody has caught on for 2-3 days, and suddenly it becomes.
It's almost like वो अपने यहाँ पे वो I Spy खेलते हैं ना बच्चे.
Yeah, exactly.
North India में बोलते हैं ना धप्पा.
Absolutely. FPIs are pulling money, P notes, this and that. Then everybody goes, this section में ऐसे यहाँ पे लिखा था. This word means this, because these two words are used in conjunction. It has completely distorted the meaning. Oh my God.
One thing that has always baffled me is the budget is so secretive. Agree. But the moment the budget speech is being read, the infographics keep coming out without any error. Forget fine print or twist or jo bhi hai. The infographics.
You are a very good question. Your question hurt me.
So stuff that the finance minister reads is not even the drop of the ocean. A lot of the time, some of the little tweaks in, say, how to tax NRI's whatever income in India, abroad. One word would change, and it would be in the memorandum of understanding. There is what is that document called?
Annexure.
A memoranda. It is a
Achha.
memorandum or memoranda. I don't know what that document is called. It's just an explanation of all the things that have happened. It would be a 100 page document, and
So
it
it's
would go
basically a
section by
document
section.
that clarifies what is what
Exactly.
basically
And-
complicates what is simplified in the budget.
and then that clarification that is in the memorandum is further clarified 2, 3, 4 times by the ministry further days after the budget has been presented. If something, so there's rarely a year where a completely hidden thing like this does not affect the market.
Harish, you
or some
remember
other
एक बार अपन बात कर रहे थे, we are the only country which is a tax on tax. वही हाल.
So
we
yeah,
have,
I mean,
no, that's what. No, me and Rohit are having this discussion that every person who is born a communist because he has no money. The kid has no money. He has to depend on the government, mummy and papa, to feed and this thing. So till college, till his first job, till his first salary, he is a communist. He has to depend on someone. Wants everything for free. People should sponsor him. His luck is down this thing and everything. But the time that first salary comes in, he becomes a proper corporate. Why government is taxing me for my hard work? Why I should pay?
एक बात बताओ, now that you mentioned this, and Sumit and Harish talk more on this. ये inflation की problem, doesn't it arise significantly also from this freebie culture that's there कहीं ना कहीं? Or is it just my assumption?
From what culture?
Freebie culture जो चला हुआ है सब तरफ, सब फ्री में बांट दो, फ्री बिजली, फ्री पानी, फ्री खाना, चाहे वो कूड़े में जा रहा हो सब.
No, it is not on freebie. I think it is mostly on unions. I mean, there is OPEC which controls the oil. Then there is this edible oil union. Then there is a seed corporation. Then there is the wheat corporation. These guys set the price. So each time thing happens, I think they're the ones who are simply creating a false.
I mean,
inflation.
I understand that,
So,
but हाँ बोलो.
So RBI का data था of 4 years during I think Manmohan Singh, and I'm pretty sure it's the same after that also. For 4 years, their forecast for inflation, they got it horribly wrong. They just couldn't nail it. So inflation would always be either higher or lower than what RBI forecast. So in the macro economy where inflation resides, this is a concept of the macro economy. It's very hard to nail it. Inflation is just a sort of a it's almost a mirage. I mean, it's not a mirage in the sense that it does not really exist, but it's very hard to pin it down. RBI can't get it. So who are we to say the OPEC does it or other edible oil or freebies do it?
No, I'm talking about unions. I'm talking about these. I'm not talking specifically about a set union. I'm talking that there is a group of people.
Basically more in the nature of cartels, na? You mean to say?
Yeah.
Oil ka cartel hai, seed ka cartel hai. I'm not denying that.
What Rohit is
I am saying
saying
that is one end of the problem. My issue is that doesn't the other end of the problem also cause an issue somewhere?
It could. I mean, just look at the theory of it. What is inflation? A lot of money chasing limited amount of goods. So driving the prices up, right? So if you have freebies, if your electricity is free, if your pani is free, a lot of other services are free, then you have a lot of disposable income. A lot of people have a lot of disposable income. They are running after certain consumable goods, which are either at that point of time in a certain amount of supply, and that supply will obviously be is limited. A lot of money is going after it. Pricing will be driven before the industry or whichever before it's produced in the amount that is currently required, and the inflation will cool down. This is the theory of it, the textbook theory of it. In the real world, how so what you said, the freebies. I mean, the short answer is the freebies could affect inflation, could drive up inflation as a matter of textbook story case. But whether it happens or not happens, it's something very hard. I mean, did the US imagine that there is inflation currently afflicting it, or a lot of other European nations, highest in 40 years, highest in 30
US
years?
के case में, and correct me if I'm wrong, Harish, basically COVID pandemic में aid के नाम पे they went on a dollar printing spree, essentially.
That is one.
They heated the market up from what I've understood. कि उन्होंने पैसा भर भर के सबके हाथ में भर दिया, but ठूस के लोगों को, even if they didn't need it, पैसा दिया.
No, have you
And
noticed?
that has come back to bite them.
No. Have you noticed Biden's latest announcements? He has announced 800 million towards the war in
हाँ, तो करना ही पड़ेगा ना उसको, कहीं तो खर्चा करना.
No. My point is he should have. But coming back to the freebies, I just want to point out one thing on the freebies is that freebies create a lazy community.
वो तो है.
ठीक है. In the long run, it creates a lazy community that yes, I'm getting everything for free. Why should I work? Basically, I'm roti, kapda, makan to mil raha hai. So मैं क्यों? Then it creates a lazy population. Now, lazy population at some point has to work. I mean, when the country needs it, or some in small scale industries or people, they need manpower. They'll be like, we are not ready to work. We are not ready to work. You know, you keep giving us freebies. We will not work. So you have this vicious cycle which is created by the freebies for a populist vote.
And I mean, isn't that the case with Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka में क्यों अभी इतना बुरा हाल है? Because it is a social. It was always following what it called as socialist path, right? And I mean, trying to subsidize prices, cutting down on tax collections. Organic का तो तमाशा अलग ही था खैर. But broadly, they've always been left of center on all policies, right?
Yeah.
So, and it has come back to bite them at some stage.
It has always
and they were
been
over-dependent on tourism. I mean, Sri Lanka की textile industry, I remember, used to be a good competitor to Bangladesh किसी जमाने में. But वो मतलब that 2010 के आसपास की बात कर रहा हूँ. But we never saw it pick up.
No, we saw the same situation in Japan also. That's why that Abe became famous for his Abenomics.
Yeah.
He became famous for his Japan, even though they were highly industrialized. Even opposite of Sri Lanka. Let's take another example of opposite of Sri Lanka, where they were highly industrialized, IT true. Sector, and things became so expensive that he had to find other means to bring down the prices.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I believe it was so expensive, demand literally became zero because of कोई interest ही नहीं किसी को कुछ खरीदने में.
People from marrying.
Wasn't Japan suffering from deflation?
So that is what deflation effectively is, right? Nobody wants anything.
So the
it's like this. I'll tell you something. Now that you mention it, I remember a very interesting story. NDA जब power में थी 98 से 2004 के बीच में. I don't know if you remember this. I believe 2000 के आसपास की बात है. Inflation rate in India had reached 0%.
Really?
I don't.
Yeah. There was one. एक महीना ऐसा भी आया था जब 0% इन्फ्लेशन रेट हुई थी. Though we used to do it little differently उस समय कैलकुलेशन के टर्म्स में, but I remember very distinctly because it became big news, and the worry was that people were worried कि zero हो गई है.
But why? I mean,
because prices... and this is a thing. Inflation eventually is a sign of demand in the economy, right?
Yeah, for a growing economy like India or any, I mean. US might afford, Japan might afford a 0% economy inflation and may not have
this is exactly what everybody was worried about. Demand का चली गई एकदम से इंडिया में.
अच्छा.
And this was, by the way, around the years when there was, I think, couple of years of drought. उस time पे NDA के अंडर भी 2 droughts हुए थे या something of that sort. उसकी वजह से हुआ था. Rural demand zero थी.
Yeah, this I don't remember. I'm sure
it's an old story. I just remember this out of the blue. Maybe I'll check it up.
For a month, for a brief period, it might have been zero.
Exactly, and people were really worried because zero हो गई. कोई demand ही नहीं, कोई activity ही नहीं push हो सकती economy के अंदर.
Yeah, since we're traveling back, so let's remember this. I mean, during Manmohan Singh, the end of Manmohan Singh's tenure, I think 9, 10, 11, 12, inflation was raging. Above 10%, 11, 12%, right? I mean, and that became that became almost decision foretold कि भाई अब तो ये जाएगा ये government. So apart from all the corruption and everything, now a lot of people sort of credit that or hold responsible the indiscriminate lending at that time. So. And since you've covered power sector, you've been involved in that area. There was CA had forecast some power demand. कितनी होगी अगले 10 साल में 15 साल में. That actually did not come true as much. but they were building power plants all over the place without any sort of sense of viability, whether there is demand, whether these will go idle or not. A lot of them went idle, a lot of them went bankrupt, and Lanco and a lot of the other companies, gas power plants. So the and obviously there were also allegations of phone banking. That Chidambaram at that time, the finance minister at that time, was sitting in finance ministry, and the crony capitalism and all that. People were getting, banks were getting calls from finance ministry. हाँ भाई इसका loan clear कर दो, इसका loan clear कर दो. So the entire economy is flush with money, and money going into infrastructure building. So a lot of these power plants were coming up in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, coastal Andhra Pradesh.
Acha, let me tell you something very interesting. Now that you bring it up, and this is something I've learned with discussion
finish what
from.
I'm saying,
Go
this entire the inflation at that time was because the money in the economy, the lending and the borrowing far exceeded what should have been proper at that time.
That's true.
And once you are lending, maybe you are lending to the power plant, but that power plant is building, is buying cement, is hiring people, is buying a lot of other raw materials. So it's spread over all the entire economy, and that sort of supercharged inflation, and it went flying into double digits. So that's then after Modi came in 2014, it sort of cooled down, has been under between 4 to 6% as the RBI has mandated or has
basically वो targeting हुआ ना, inflation targeting जिसे कहते हो.
Basically they say कि 4 से 6% के बीच में तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. This is what our economy should aim at. If it goes above this, we should bring it down. If it goes below this, then also it's not good for us. So it's been within that band since then. So what has been done differently since 2000? Just to understand what inflation is. A period of 4 or 5 years before Modi came in, and period since 2014 till before Ukraine war, when because of the oil and everything,
oil is a big contributor.
So what did we do in these 7-8 years that inflation remained under control? I think number one was that there was so much of because of the indiscriminate lending of previous years. It took years, I think 4, 5, 6 years, and bankruptcy law and all of that to clear all this books of the banks, because the what do you call the non-performing assets and all of that. So once economy started to sort of come onto the track, there banks were not in the position to lend, so there wasn't much liquidity in it. The interest rates were high, so I don't think there was. So I'm just trying to juxtapose two periods where one, inflation was runaway, going into double digits, and then inflation was within the band that was mandated by RBI. Are we able to figure out how inflation works? One going up and one coming down.
Didn't the calculation way we calculate inflation change? I mean, under the Modi government, they made it some wholesale price instead of CPI versus WPI. Some nonsense.
So there have been, in fact, CPI, even the basket has changed somewhat. That's true.
Yeah.
But broadly, it remains the same.
To not be completely incomparable. You can compare it to Modi's, Manmohan Singh's last 4 years and 2014 till about 2020-21. It's a function of money in the economy, essentially. So as you said, I mean, I recently just came across this comical headline that California, because the gas prices are apparently what, $5, $6, $7 per gallon.
4.46.
So California government will give $1,000, $1,050 to everyone to tide over.
Are they mad?
So the textbook, as I said, I started with the same thing. The textbook theory of inflation is if you pump more money into the economy, it will raise inflation. While you are struggling with inflation, you are putting more money.
My honest confession, I am a bit of a monetary fiscal hawk. I don't think money should flow necessarily so easily. But now that you mentioned it, I mean, a couple of stories, and I think I'll ask Harish to also, talk more based on those stories. So it's always said that 2008, when the financial crisis had hit the world, basically it was one horrible winter of depression that came in, and every country is unnecessarily put in or released a financial package to quote unquote revive the economy. A lot of people apparently had warned the Indian government. So there were people who were saying कि हमें भी package चाहिए, हमें भी package चाहिए. We all know who those people are. ठीक है? But there were a lot of people who actually said, don't bring in this financial package. It will overheat the economy. But the government did it. The government still went ahead and did it. And the kind of liquidity injection that happened subsequently led to a lot of the other problems that you mentioned. Na?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
No,
And we faced a similar situation during pandemic. Boiled over every country.
People are asking for paisa left, right, center, mang ke pagal kar diya.
No.
And these guys,
just
Modi
to
and his team are toming the fact that they did not fall, as in they did not follow the same path. This guy wrote an article. Sanjeev Sania wrote an article rebutting Joseph Stiglitz was a Nobel Prize winning economist.
Leela Patnaik had in fact said that the government is doing great by not doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but at that time when the entire world is doing it, it's very hard to not do it. And then
I get that, but my point is that when you have advice there for you,
no, there is this funny thing happening right now. I mean, if anyone who is listening can just go and see what is the inflation remittance. There's a new thing called inflation remittance issued by Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and UAE. That is for its citizens who are impacted by the high rise in, because right now if you convert the UAE's fuel price into from dirhams to rupees, it is higher than what is sold in India.
Are you kidding me?
You can check right now. I mean, even
these are countries that have the oil over heaven.
Yeah, they produce oil.
The oil pump is there. The tanki is on top of the house.
That I know they don't have refining capacities. Even I know that. But for heaven's sake, they are the ones with the oil.
So they, to protect their citizens from going into poverty, they have put an inflation remittance which their citizens can claim, not the expatriates, not the NRIs, nobody, but their citizens alone, that they can produce.
Same as California. You're putting more money into people's pockets to fight inflation. If there is more money in the economy,
now that you mention it, isn't this what Turkey also did basically, right? For the last 2-3 years, it kept printing notes despite having high inflation. And now, thanks to it, I shared this with you, right? Annual inflation rate crossing 72%.
Yeah, absolutely. only. I mean, we used to envy, or everybody envies US because dollar being the reserve currency or whatever, that they can print as much as they want without worrying about inflation. They can just blow away their debt and all of that. But they are now caught in the crosshair right now. They're suffering from inflation, and there seem to be no way out. What is happening in the US then? Where is this inflation coming from? If their dollar is in demand all over the world, they can print whatever. So this is.
But the world doesn't have the capacity to absorb that dollar, no? The world just doesn't have the capacity, right? If I'm not mistaken, it cannot buy off the dollars.
Seems to be happening.
And what I've learned is apparently China is dumping the dollar bond.
Okay. China, you only shared this thing, na, that realty estate.
In fact, China is going back to barter, जो हमने एक बार discuss किया तरबूज के बदले flat
potatoes.
तरबूज के बदले flat बेच रहे हैं, आड़ू के बदले flat. Anyway, but this is funny, But coming back to the point, and another story that I wanted to highlight because of the inflation thing. My point is, for this story, essentially the unpredictable nature of anything that happens, and even though you think certain things are within your grasp, they just blow up in your face. A lot of us time pe 2010-11 mein, lot of ultra mega power plants came up, if you remember. Right, and they were coming 1.5 rupees a unit, 1.2 rupees a unit, 1.3 rupees a unit, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered NTPC का एक भी नहीं था उस time पे?
Yeah.
And you know what happened? And I learned this.
No, NTPC is on record saying that these rates were unsustainable.
Exactly. They were on record saying these rates are not possible. How are these people making these rates possible? You know, they pegged it to import of of Indonesian coal.
Indonesian coal, which suddenly shut off.
And then it disappeared off the market.
Because it was blacklisted, no? There was
exactly.
Latest news wherein the blacklisted company, some Baira or Nara, somebody was blacklisted in an Indonesian company for.
वो तो है ही, but मतलब generally in 2016 itself, Indonesia banned the export of coal, यार. Forget everybody else. They banned the export of coal.
Initially, they benchmarked it to international rates, and then the rates shot off.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, very recently, they have banned the export of it because they've regulated it. So all these Adanis, I think the one was Adani in Mundra and
coastal वाला था ना, एक मुंद्रा वाला अडानी का था, एक कोस्टल वाला टाटा का था. तो ये टाटा तो ₹1 में देने को तैयार था, इतना बड़ा प्लांट. तमाशा क्या था, हमको टैरिफ नहीं मिल रहा है, हमको टैरिफ नहीं मिल रहा है. It went to the point that 2017-18 में जाके basically the court case got adjudicated कि चलो change of law हुआ है because of coal का import ban, ये वो दुनिया का. But for 5 years the plant bled money. Money. Not even bled, it hemorrhaged money.
Remember we did a piece on Japan. I was researching on Japan energy stock, and I found out the Indian energy stock prices were so high. They were they were all quoting profits. Abhi it's in the bottom. It's in the bottom rung. I mean, our own energy index, if anybody is interested, can go see a big jump and a big steep dive in our energy.
Surprised.
Because
the way stocks have bled tells you na.
No, the energy producing plants, they hold on to the energy. This thing, they create a false demand by not supplying. Prices go up, then they sell it in the stock.
देखो उसके पीछे और भी कारण है ना, because discounts तो नलायक पे नहीं कर रहे हैं, पैसा ही नहीं देने को आधे टाइम उनके पास. You know what is the debt? I kid you not. I was checking the numbers the other day for writing something. The discoms collectively owe Gencos right now 4 trillion rupees.
Yeah, I'm not
4
surprised.
trillion rupees. I'm like, what the hell?
Vijay Mallya looks like a small fry.
Yeah, exactly.
But the discoms are all state-owned, so the money is not.
वो इसीलिए छूट जाते हैं. Basically, वो इसी कारण से छूट जाते हैं. You can have Uday 2, Uday 4, Uday 22.
Yeah, this is not going to happen. Yeah, exactly.
Unless this behavior changes, na.
The guys making Uday 1, 2, 3, 4, they also know that.
उसका पैसा ले रहा है. Implementation के 2 और एजेंसी पैसे ले रही है.
But we digress a little bit from inflation. So coming back, what I don't understand is why can't all the world leaders just come to the table and just agree we'll go to pre-COVID times, whatever things are happening, it was happening good for all. So why don't we all just do a good reset of
Harish, stop sounding like Maulana Saad Rizvi, हाँ, वो एक पाकिस्तान का पागल सा मौलाना था, जिसका पाकिस्तान की इन्फ्लेशन के लिए, मतलब पाकिस्तान की महंगाई का सबसे अच्छा सोल्यूशन था, हम धमकी देंगे दुनिया को कि हम तुम्हारे सूद नहीं देंगे, असल देंगे सिर्फ. This kind of Pakistanomics ना मेरे सामने मत करो, ठीक है?
I don't think four people can get together and decide. It is far too complex for one button to, you can't switch or press one button and.
No, it is. Our discussion is filled with oxymorons. Let's start with that. We all know the solution. Yet the solution is impossible to implement.
Yeah,
true. Anyway, can we talk about the fact that inflation? I mean, obviously, if you look at news channels and newspapers, inflation से सबसे पहले लोग भागते हैं गरीबों को परेशानी और गरीबों का जीना हराम और दुभर हो रहा है. How has it affected you? Personal testimonies from all of you. Does it affect us? Sort of. We are broadly in the middle class.
करता तो है, can't deny that, and I'll give you my own example. अब मेरे घर में जैसे cooking oil जो आता है, and this is something I think I shared it with both of you कभी ना कभी. Cooking oil prices, because I've been doing grocery shopping for more than 3 years now, ठीक है? घर में ही pretty much मैं ही संभालता हूँ खर्चे करके.
That is the number of years he is married also. Just fun fact.
ठीक है. जख्मों में नमक डालने की जरूरत नहीं होती यार. But I mean, point is, when I remember distinctly buying mustard oil, for instance, at 80 rupees a liter.
Okay.
Today it's about 160 easily. And it's not even 4
Wow.
years. So
Double. Yeah.
though there are a lot of other factors and nobody's been able to give me a conclusive answer as to why cooking oil is so expensive today in India. There is a genuine inflation that has taken place in prices. वही छोड़ दो, अगर मैं कुकिंग ऑयल तो एक इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे बात कर रहा हूँ. I recently got my car switched to CNG. यार. Just imagine CNG at 72 rupees, which was at 40 in January. 72 right, 75 right now. Even at 75 rupees, it's cheaper than petrol for me, which is at 96, 97.
True.
And I'm willing to take that upfront cost, by the way, for conversion. Though it's an old car, point is, वो upfront cost of conversion जो है, for me the economics works out. Just imagine कि 50,000 रुपए लगा के मैं CNG खरीदने को तैयार हूँ. You get that, right?
You will get a return on
I mean, but you get the
investment.
sense, right? The inflation rate has, in fact, so my father went to get the cars, RC के नाम पे उनके है गाड़ी, उसके RC अपडेट कराने गए थे और दिल्ली का नंबर प्लेट था, तो दिल्ली में गए थे. Can you imagine? He told me that he was waiting for 2 hours in a line because इतने लोगों ने CNG conversion कराई है पीछे.
Wow. Okay. In this time that the petrol
Literally
has
in the
gone
last
up.
few months, it seems that's been the case.
Wow. Okay.
People are so like pinched by this, and this is not like. In fact, my driver who was with him, वो मेरे को बता रहा था कि भैया वहाँ तो BMW वाले भी आए हुए थे, लाइन में लगे हुए थे.
अच्छा. BMW
में CNG लगे, ये हाल है.
That's the proper, as in proper headline.
I swear. I mean,
for me, it was just the price of like Rohit said, one is the autos and taxi, because I travel by auto or taxi. The prices have gone up. I mean, and plus that whatever strike happened, it has gone up from 100. It's become 120, 130, and a small drizzle will put it to 400. A small here in Kerala it is raining. Because when I go to the airport, it started with 18 rupees. The prepaid taxi per kilometer was 18. Today it is 39.6.
Oh wow.
Okay, starting.
That's literally double, yeah.
It started with 39.6 for all vehicles. I mean, irrespective of whether it's a small vehicle, big vehicle. It started when I was in 2016. It was just 18 rupees, and it used to cost me 1,500, 2,000. Today it is costing me 4,000, close to 5,000 rupees just to reach home.
That's crazy.
So and since we haven't, I mean, none of us has got our houses built or has used any of the construction material, but apparently they've shot up through the roof. The prices of bricks. I mean, people.
I've heard that. I know somebody who has a brick kiln.
Steel.
And even he was complaining that the raw material cost has shot up.
Yeah, it has, and by some margin. That it's something that people talk about constantly. People who are building, renovating or building a new house, or just doing some repairs. I recently traveled, and there were people who had been doing all of this, and this was a constant refrain that building materials have become expensive suddenly. I don't know why. Why would building material get?
Raw material का issue होगा ना. जो मेरे को understanding है, raw material has become very expensive. See, it also these building materials also come out as output, na, basically.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Of something. अब प्रॉब्लम ये हो रही है कि क्यों हो रहा है एग्जैक्टली, ये भी कोई नहीं बता पा रहा. लेकिन
steel we are importing. Our steel exports have, if you read latest news and all, our steel exports have gone up, so we have to import steel for domestic use.
This happened because we had basically put a dumping duty on steel, na? So 2014-15 में.
So steel
that is coming back to bite us now.
Cement has gone up. So these are your basic materials. Then MEP, what your AC. AC is the most costliest item in an.
Yeah, AC तो महंगा हुआ है. I agree. तो काफी महंगा हुआ है.
So because of the copper, I think.
Copper की बात है. Copper तो we became net importers, na, thanks to the stupidity that happened in
even worldwide, all the commodity prices have gone up. Copper has really shot off, so that has gone.
अभी जो हम electric vehicle रो रहे हैं ना इस समय, lithium prices have gone up more than 50%.
Wow.
Because China is under lockdown.
चाइना ने तो बंद कर दिया एक्सपोर्ट उसका. ऑस्ट्रेलिया अपनी माइंस ही खोल रहा है, क्योंकि ऑस्ट्रेलिया के अभी रिजर्व्स खुले ही नहीं है उस तरह के. दे डोंट इवन नो कितना लिथियम प्रोड्यूस हो पाएगा.
तो वही ना, तो
रिजर्व इज चाइना.
हाँ तो चाइना एंड अफ्रीका, आई मीन बेसिकली अफ्रीका इज
अफ्रीका
चाइना.
भी वही बात है ना अभी, इसका एक्चुअल निकले कितना निकलेगा हमको नहीं पता ना, पॉइंट वही है, प्रूवन रिजर्व नहीं है ना उस तरह का.
हाँ, so that's why we are going for the
क्वांटम
green
के term.
hydrogen bullshit and whatever Reliance is pushing for green
Nah, no,
hydrogen.
green hydrogen की case तो अलग ही है खैर. It is
No,
also
no.
got to do with gas production, but yeah, I
हाँ,
get what you're saying. I mean, it's
Yeah,
very,
general trend
very.
is
I mean,
the same
genuinely, it's
direction.
across commodities, across
Yeah.
items right now. This sense of inflation is very different because now, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a very long time since there's been an inflation across all items that I could think of. मतलब it's not just one or two items that are causing it globally. Like जैसे oil $100 हो जाता था barrel तो समझ भी आता था. That it would hit other commodities. ये तो पूरा across the मतलब entire everything जो सोच सकते हो उस चीज के प्राइस बढ़े हुए हैं.
हाँ तो वही ना, so we might
Not
need
because
a.
of oil, by the way. My point is that it's not because of the oil.
हाँ, so that's what
Oil
ना,
का मतलब
so
factor है, but it's oil का factor जो 2010 में था, it's not the same today.
नहीं, we are getting cheaper oil from Russia.
Exactly. So
Oil is not this. हाँ तो
There was this interesting.
Rohit is stuck. You're stuck.
Yeah.
हिल रहा हूँ.
हाँ. Now
you're back. Yeah.
हाँ.
There was something interesting. I think it was a conference call of some investment firm or whatever. And this guy was explaining what happens. Lockdowns have happened and production goes down. So how difficult it is to bring it back after a year and a half, 2 years, right? It seems okay. You can just turn the switch off. Tap is off, turn the switch on, but it doesn't happen like so. Simple example he gave was, suppose there's this company that manufactures or I think it was a oil exploration company that has rigs to do exploration. Now, during pandemic, suppose it has 3 rigs. Only one is now required for drilling and doing all the process and all that. 2 of them are idle because the demand is down and everything is down. Now, as happens in general course of work or drilling, the one rig that is currently working has broken down, and they realize that the 2 others that are completely dormant right now, we can cannibalize them. We can use some of their parts and use them instead of ordering new parts, right? So they use these parts in the existing machine that is currently working. Now, since you've used this part, you've not placed the order to the guy who is making these parts, right? So that is also seeing lesser demand. That guy has also lowered its production. When suddenly the demand ramps up, or when COVID, the world seems to have got some handle on COVID, or the economy seems to be bouncing back, this guy suddenly finds out, oh, I need all 3 of my rigs, but I can't use them. They're idle, and I cannot immediately bring them into action because the parts that I have already taken out from them is not in production. So everything takes. It does not happen in a
domino effect.
In a matter of 15 days or 20 days. It might take
years.
It might take not years, but maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Who knows? So all of these raw material and cement and everything that we're talking about, as Rohit said, that oil has gone over 100 barrels, but that does not explain how the inflation seems to be showing up in everything, all across the spectrum, all across the board. Maybe one explanation could be that since we went into this downturn during the pandemic, system is still struggling to come back to full demand that we are experiencing, and all these costs and bottlenecks.
That's actually a good point. That's a very good point that you make. In fact, Sumit, I mean, it sort of makes a lot of sense instinctively. No, I agree. I mean, it is a fact, and I think even Harish would agree to it, that the kind of production figures that you could probably see, say, pre-COVID pandemic, pre-2020, nobody has been able. I mean, people are saying that we have higher production, etc., but the number of hours that are now going in achieving that has increased manyfold. Isn't it?
So in the G7,
12 घंटे की शिफ्ट का 15 घंटा शिफ्ट हो चुका है इस समय. So productivity necessarily नहीं बढ़ी है इसका मतलब.
So in G7, this guy, what's his name? Macron does a video clip which is going around where Macron is speaking with Biden and saying that he's
Yeah,
spoken with
yeah, we don't have the
UAE and
capacity to do it.
they don't have the capacity to ramp up productions of oil. That is one. And we also saw not just of oil. There are two things. One, we saw that Maersk thing which happened in the Egyptian, where that ship just blocked the entire global supply chain.
Yeah.
So
absolutely horrible.
So that one was there.
Causing havoc across the world.
Yeah.
And remember, I shared an article with you that Citibank has released a report where they're saying that because of recession, the prices of oil will go from $100 a barrel to $65 because countries will stop buying. And people are countries are investing in renewable energy. India has achieved 40% renewable energy net. Again, listeners, net.
By the way, didn't Europe just classify gas
nuclear
as green?
Nuclear and gas.
Too, yeah. Oh my God.
I want to cuss in Hindi right now. I won't do it because of the sanctity of this platform. But I really want to cuss some of the few people because ये हमको प्रवचन देते हैं रोज उठ के और अब ये हरकतें कर रहे हैं.
No,
अरे बहुत गुस्सा दिखाया है इसपे.
No, I saw one tweet where they say that NATO ends where gas begins.
Of course, of course. वो तो है ही.
So
अच्छा एक बात on a side note है, वैसे देख लो ये एक ही कंट्री ने रोड़ा पाया हुआ है, ठीक है, पंजाबी में बोलूंगा. वो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर भी उसी की वजह से हुई थी, सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर भी उसकी वजह से हुई थी, मैं थर्ड वर्ल्ड वॉर भी वही स्टार्ट करवा रहा है इस समय.
एनर्जी हाँ टेक्निकली
और तीनों टाइम वही स्यापा था, मुझे रिसोर्स चाहिए.
हाँ आई मीन जर्मनी इज डाइंग.
शर्म ही नहीं आती उनको ये करते.
और उनका फॉरेन मिनिस्टर बोल रहा है कि तुम जेल में क्यों इसको भेज रहे हो, उसको भेज रहे हो.
और वो किसी वो क्या बोलूं मैं, किसी पैर के लिए ये तमाशा लगा रखा है.
वही मतलब क्या अबे
नहीं they have arrested one Ukrainian reporter.
Yeah, exactly. People are pointing out.
Right. वो Ukrainian Russian को किसी को.
Yeah. That's the funny part about today's day and age. No, none of these things. I mean, 10 years ago, normal people would not even know that Germany is doing this to a journalist, and this guy is lecturing us. Now everything out there is.
जहाँ चौधरी बन रहे हैं, एडवर्ड स्नोडन के अगेंस्ट केस करने में जर्मनी भी बहुत आगे था भाई.
वही जूलियन असांज बेचारा क्या कर रहा है उसको.
वो आज भी इक्वाडोर के एम्बेसी में बैठा हुआ है, निकारागुआ के एम्बेसी में बैठा हुआ है.
Khashoggi is there.
Jamal Khashoggi.
And then this latest American Palestinian reporter who got killed in
shot.
Shot. Now Biden is not talking about it, and Biden will go to Saudi this month to dance with the king.
जाना ही पड़ेगा ना. वही हो गया ना, गधे को भी बाप बनाना पड़ता है ना मजबूरी में. इतना बुरा हाल है अमेरिका का. Oil. See, this is how it worked.
But I love the way
he allows oil mining.
But you noticed the narratives of the Maulanas have changed once Saudi has been replaced by Russia as India's foremost energy provider. Now all Maulanas are saying Nupur Sharma ने क्या गलत बोला. कुछ गलत नहीं बोला. आप भी छोड़ दो नुपुर शर्मा को. Let's get back to inflation.
Yeah, let's get back to inflation.
I'm saying the
नहीं वो तो देखो है political उस तरह की
बिजनेस में पैसा जहाँ हिट करेगा ना तो ये सारा सब पॉलिटिक्स लाइन पे आ जाएगा अपने आप. जहाँ पे
यही होता है इनके. जब
you see,
चलो यार थोड़ा कसवर्ड बोल ही देते हैं, इनकी गांड पे जब लात पड़ेगी ना सब ठीक हो जाता है.
जो एज ओल्ड मतलब विजडम है, ये तो सबको पता है कि पिछवाड़े पे लात पड़ती है तो सब सीधा होता है.
So this time India has played its cards very
well.
correctly.
That I agree with.
Even though they say we are friends with everyone, they have preferred friends. We have preferred friends where we are best friends with someone and we are okay friends with someone. So so
energy मीम नहीं चलता. वो कौन सा वीडियो था उसमें कोई ब्लैक प्रेसिडेंट होता है, वो सबके गले लग रहा है और एक दो कंट्रीज को इग्नोर करता है. वो वाला हाल है इंडिया का. परफेक्ट. लिटरली इंडियाज फॉरेन पॉलिसी स्टेटमेंट इसने शेयर किया था ट्वीट. बड़ा मजेदार.
उस पे इतने मीम्स बने हैं या डिफरेंट टाइप के.
I swear, but that Indian foreign policy वाला meme was the perfect one.
हाँ, it was very to the point.
Absolutely bang on. मतलब.
Absolutely, yes, it was. So ये जो मैं बोल रहा था कि हमने इंडिविजुअल का डिस्कस कर लिया कि कैसे मतलब हमको या किसी और को अफेक्ट करता है इन्फ्लेशन, and clearly it is affecting us. And but how do countries go through inflation? As in, you talked about Turkey. We're seeing what's happening in Sri Lanka. We've always heard about Argentina. You know, we discussed previously about Argentina and all those where inflation would just shoot up. Zimbabwe is a joke. People talk about it.
अच्छा, Zimbabwe, Argentina के बारे में बात करेंगे. अपने बात खत्म करो. I'll tell you something very interesting about the two of them.
Yeah.
Means,
this is where I was going. So we've talked about where inflation is, as in India. हमारे यहाँ हमने हिस्टोरिकली बात कर ली, मनमोहन सिंह के टेन्योर में, मोदी के टेन्योर में, वर्ल्ड में क्या हो रहा है, इंडिविजुअली कैसे इफेक्ट पड़ता है. मेरा पॉइंट था कि जब कंट्री सस्टेन इन्फ्लेशन, फॉर एग्जांपल अर्जेंटीना और जिम्बाब्वे, what happens over a course of say 10 years? Do these countries become poor? Are there people like it happens in Venezuela?
Exactly.
Are they dying? But you hear the horrible stories from Venezuela. You hear horrible stories from Zimbabwe. But Argentina, Greece was at that time. Greece keeps defaulting, as Hari said.
Greece ka case is an outlier in every sense. Good point that you raised. Greece has been an outlier because Germany के interest में था कि Greece पैसा ले सके. So you have to remember that.
Spelling it out basically.
If the European Union did not exist, the Deutsche Mark would be the world's most expensive currency. An economist friend of mine told me this. क्योंकि उनकी इकोनॉमी इतनी सॉलिड है प्रोडक्शन की वजह से. मीटन स्टार्ट करके एक कॉन्सेप्ट होता है मिडिल साइज्ड कंपनीज, नॉट बिग कॉर्पोरेशंस, वेरी फ्यू बिग कॉर्पोरेशन, समथिंग इक्विवेलेंट टू आवर एमएसएमईज का मिडिल वाला सेगमेंट जो होता है. Lot of them. So they don't make like the whole car, but they will make like the gears which nobody can replicate.
Or Germany is very strong in that.
Sensors that nobody can duplicate. China has tried very hard to do that. वो नहीं कर पाई अभी तक reverse engineer उनके products को by the way.
But then Germany sells.
But Germany की problem दूसरी है that it over technologize everything. So
and the market is China. That's why this is in China has its balls in its hands.
So the point was that
and don't be surprised. Just to digress a little bit, don't be surprised if China has a hand in whatever the foreign minister has just recently said, because Germany is completely beholden to China as a market. They can't afford to lose it.
वो तो होगा ही, कहीं ना कहीं उनका उंगली होगा.
So coming back to Greece and then Argentina, how does Argentina keep
So what I was saying was that Greece को afloat रखना Germany के interest में, because it remains economically competitive if the euro exists.
Yeah.
Because the euro is an artificially deflated currency by that logic.
Okay.
This is the fun part, ठीक है? Argentina की problem बड़ी अनोखी है. Argentina has defaulted 3 times in the century by the way. Sovereign default 3 times in 1 century. ठीक है, और ये 4th हुआ है अभी, आई थिंक जो हुआ है, if I'm not mistaken, या उसकी कगार पे खड़े. And this पहले दो तो they actually were on a good path of prosperity जब वो deflation की वजह से hit हुए. Last 2 in fact have been really bad for them because mining, oil, gas सब खत्म. They had essentially been reduced to an agri economy. And they are a very poor country. Mind you, it is इतनी अजीब स्थिति है. Do you know per lakh या per million, I believe किसी ने बताया था, Argentina has the highest number of psychologists and psychiatrists in the world. Yeah. तो लोगों के अंदर वैसी कोई मोटिवेशन नहीं है, इसका मतलब कुछ भी करने की.
But I have one.
But yeah, coming back to the point, जो उनका जो because they became an agri economy. साउथ अमेरिका का जो अभी जो क्लाइमेट का जो इशू है, क्लाइमेट चेंज को जो उनको असर पड़ रहा है, इट इज सिवियर इन फैक्ट. दैट हैज हिट देयर व्हीट प्रोडक्शन बिग टाइम दिस टाइम, एंड दे वर अ व्हीट एक्सपोर्टर एसेंशियली. तो वो बैंड बजी हुई है. श्रीलंका क्या था? श्रीलंका के कोई थोड़ा ना कोई रिसोर्सेज है. श्रीलंका तो बेसिकली फॉरेन एक्सपोर्ट, अपने फॉरेन रेमिटेंसेस भी क्या थी? कुछ भी नहीं थी. रेमिटेंस भी नहीं है श्रीलंका में ज्यादा. बेसिकली देयर नेट बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट वाज समहाउ मैनेज्ड by tourism and by tea and some spices.
I have one question to Sumit. So
Hmm.
I was just thinking about the timelines. So Rohit mentioned the recession also. So that was 2008. All right. Now in 2021, that is just 13 years, we faced a similar kind of
Yeah.
economic slowdown or jo bhi hai. So till 2021, on a global scale, where we already ramped up or we were still ramping up, that is whether things are falling in place. I mean, from your point of view, I mean, since you're a financial guy,
Hmm.
I'm just looking at we were looking at a global view, and I
Good
had these
question.
eyes. I was just thinking it. So from 2008 to 2021 is what, 19 years, or yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So
Thir- 13
huh,
years, literally
huh,
13 years,
12
not
to
13
even
13 years.
15.
Yeah.
13 years. So we had the last recession way long back, 60 years
Hmm.
or
And by
whatever.
the way, we are predicting a major recession right now,
Hmm.
worse, or if not worse, as bad as the Great Depression of the 1930s. ये
Huh.
अभी इस समय बात चल रही है.
But each time there has been, so there are various factors. One, every time there was this analyst who found out that every time the biggest building is built in the world, a recession hits.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there was an
Maybe it
actual.
tells us कि मत करो.
Yeah.
No. His point is the country is
Yeah.
buying so much
Yeah, नहीं, वो I get that.
resources,
I get
and
that. I get
suddenly it comes to a dead stop, and the people, like what Sumit said, they're cannibalizing, and suddenly they have to
that.
stop
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
production.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Then came this. What is that? Dubai hosted the, what is that, global world village? What is
Expo.
Expo.
it? World Expo. So each time a country hosts, last time it was Japan, after hosting the World Expo, it went into a recession. Now Dubai did it, but it was pandemic. It was post-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give them that. But isn't the time frame reducing, or I don't know whether we
No,
are
it's a
finding
good point. It's
too
actually a
many
very good
too
point.
too many ripples in a very short time. I mean,
That's
like
a
we
good
ramp
question.
up and then go down. I mean, 1930s were somewhere, 2008 was somewhere. Now 2008 to 2021 is 13 years. Will the next one be even smaller? I mean, in terms of
So
duration.
there could be an explanation for it. I'm no. I mean, this is just a theory, and
Yeah.
that because we are so connected that anything
Yeah.
in 1930s people were still isolated in silos. So something that happens in US will probably affect Europe, but will not affect a lot of the East Asian countries or even India at that time. 1930s, right? It was still colonized. We were colonized that time. So I mean, it would affect because British would be affected. As we have become more and more interconnected, anything that happens anywhere else, I mean, even the Suez Canal is the main trading route, but so that's probably
Tsunami,
not a good
earthquake.
example.
Mm.
Tsunami, earthquake, any supply, any sort of supply chain or any of the logistical bottleneck that exists anywhere in the world affects very distant parts of the globe. So because we are so connected, so why, one of the explanations why this is becoming closer together, as in recessions coming, 1932 was Great Depression, or 28 or 32, whatever the year was, um, and then decades after another one, we are seeing these too frequently, probably because we are too connected. Pandemic could also be a parallel, because we're too connected. People are
Yeah,
traveling so
fair
freely from
enough.
one to another.
Fair enough.
So it earlier in 1930s, something that breaks out somewhere could still be, confined to that area, could be treated. Now there is no chance. People from Wuhan are going to Italy, and the whole thing just explodes. The entire Europe
Yeah,
goes into its grips from China, something that originated from China,
yeah,
which would have been unthinkable 70, 60 years ago.
yeah.
So one of the reasons could be the globalization, and the interconnectivity is so much improved, and the global village is probably the reason why it's happening so frequently. That's the theory. I don't know what
No,
No,
it's
it
very
makes sense.
interesting you
It
mentioned
makes sense.
this.
It
No, it
makes
makes a
sense.
lot of sense, Sumit. In fact, there's something called the butterfly effect. I wonder if you people remember.
Yeah,
The theory
absolutely.
essentially was that
Butterfly.
the butterfly flaps its wings in Costa Rica and there's a
Yeah.
typhoon in another part of the world.
Mm.
But
True.
essentially, it's a way of putting up the domino effect, as you had mentioned, Harish, earlier.
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
the thing
Mm.
is this. Now, when it comes to recessions, it's ऐसा नहीं कि recessions आते जाते नहीं है. It's the severity of the depression that has actually increased in intensity, to be fair. And that
No.
is what you, I think, really want to point out. That's
No,
the
for the
severity of
common
the
man.
much bigger this time.
No, for the common man or a guy or a kid who just starts earning, how do you insulate from? I mean, you know, this is happening. I mean, we three sitting out have. I mean, with our just random discussion, we have figured it out that it is one of the key theories must be data connectivity or
नहीं, वो तो है,
globalization. So my question is, how do you insulate for, let's say, for a year or two?
That's a
or
very good. That's a
I mean,
difficult question. Good question,
yeah,
but it's a very difficult question, Harish. I mean, if do we want to give up on interconnectivity with the world to
Yeah,
insulate
exactly.
ourselves, say, from the global effects? That's a very vexed problem. I'll tell you something very interesting. My wife was telling me today afternoon. Abhi, and have you? I think you also would be aware that apparently toy exports
yes,
have
Uh,
increased in India, but
70%.
it has happened after toy imports
Fell.
were basically forced to drop
Yep.
through a duty regime.
Huh.
Now, here's the question that I have. See, I agree with the point that you want the industry to pick up in India. Okay. Briefly, I will also accept this theory कि चलो temporarily इसको थोड़ा करते हैं. Now, here's the question that nobody wants to answer. Boss, scale पे competitiveness कहाँ है?
So we are going back to a situation where we are pre-globalization, pre-Manmohan Singh finance era.
Do we want
where,
that? Now, that is my question. Do we want that? And I'll tell you why the problem is. Globalization has done more to remove poverty in India than any other mechanism or scheme or policy in this country. Let's be honest. ये कोई deny नहीं कर सकता. There is no evidence to suggest otherwise.
You could
जितनी
argue
मर्जी टांगे छलांगे पी साइनाट टाइप बकवास कर ले. Globalization has actually pulled more people out of poverty in India than anything else.
Not
Because
entirely.
we benefited from it.
We benefited too, but not entirely. I mean, in terms of jobs
I
and all.
agree.
Yes.
देखो, pitfalls में deny नहीं कर रहा. My point is that it has benefited us. Do we want to sacrifice that again? I am not saying that we don't want certain things in India. My problem is that are we able to generate competitiveness in that sense?
नहीं, we'll go back to that era where लेना है तो ले लो, नहीं तो यही मिलेगा मार्केट में. तुम दूसरे दुकान में भी जाओगे, मेरा सामान ही मिलेगा. इधर से खरीदो, उधर से खरीदो, एक ही
That's a problem ना कहीं ना कहीं. Isn't that contrary to the idea of freedom of choice then?
Yeah,
one argument is that Arvind Panagaria, right, this trade economist, he was also heading Niti Aayog for some time. So he argues कि ये सब जो आप तुम import duty बढ़ा देते हो, basically protectionism essentially. उससे कुछ होता नहीं है. He is in favor of globalization, trade free होना चाहिए. The other side of the argument is कि history में कहीं भी देख लो, whether it's China, Korea, Japan, US itself, when it was coming up and Britain was the major power.
Yeah, they were protectionist.
They were protected and they built their own domestic capacity to be able to compete. So, and you were also right. So there is a contradiction. Globalization after 1992, when we removed all those barriers, license Raj, some of it, I mean, not all of it, our economy improved. Poverty was reduced, but maybe there's one way to look at it, that globalization helped us to come from -20 to 0 or +10. But if we have to go to +50, +60, +70, we cannot do it without developing our own domestic capacity. So now is the time to, even if globalization has maybe undoubtedly helped us in reducing poverty, to ditch it and do some of the stuff that we are doing with that toy industry is a great example of. Put barriers, you stop Chinese imports into it, you start incentivizing domestic industry and make sure that it's up to the scratch. अप टू द स्क्रैच तभी होगा जब तुम प्राइवेट लोगों को बोलोगे करने के लिए, कार्टेल नहीं बनाओगे। जैसे होता है बॉम्बे सोसाइटी जो हम बोलते थे कि बॉम्बे इंडस्ट्रियल
the Bombay Club,
हम द बॉम्बे क्लब और व्हाटएवर, और इफ यू गिव एवरीथिंग टू पीएसयू, कि साला पीएसयू ही बना रहा है गाड़ी, पीएसयू बना रहा है खिलौना, नहीं। if you let the private parties domestically to compete among themselves, they will reach that level where they are able to compete globally also. But you will have to give them that breathing space that China was not allowing before. So sometimes we tend to get a little dogmatic कि नहीं एक यही फ्री ट्रेड मतलब कहीं भी डोमेस्टिक किसी पे बढ़ाना ही नहीं है, यही सबसे अच्छा जरिया है, फिर सब कुछ हो सकता है, या फिर उल्टा रिवर्स, नहीं हम मतलब सब कुछ डोमेस्टिक ही होना चाहिए, हर कुछ बंद कर दो। Maybe there is a mid path somewhere in between.
That's a very, I mean, that's a very thoughtful argument. I agree. एक चीज by the way और है, मतलब बहुत लोग नहीं डिस्कस करते हैं publicly, but it is a fact that Korea and Japan particularly benefit also from what can only be called as currency manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically जो बहुत सारी countries ने डॉलर के अगेंस्ट आर्टिफिशियली डिफ्लेट करके रखा for decades on a stretch.
That's how you get projects.
Benefit, yeah.
And even China did that. China also followed step with Japan. Japan became rich primarily because of currency manipulation, it seems, even more than industrial development. There is an argument in India by people like Sajid Chinoy, by the way, in this direction. जो वो ये कहता है कि इंडियन रुपी इज वेरी ओवरवैल्यूड अभी भी, लेट इट फॉल फ्रीली, उसको आर्टिफिशियली गिराओ उल्टा, ही सेज टू मेक आवर एक्सपोर्ट्स कंपेटिटिव।
ट्रू,
एंड ही सेज जब भी रुपी वीक हुआ है, इंडिया के एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़े, इंडिया की ग्रोथ हुई।
नहीं, each time exports increase doesn't mean that less raw materials for the
that's
people.
the problem, that's the catch. The raw materials, especially the industries जहाँ पे import होते हैं raw materials, for instance अगर नायलॉन के लिए टेरेथालिक एसिड को इंपोर्ट करना है, वो महंगा हो जाता है ना, because that is the dollar price.
You're competing,
it's a catch 22. That's what I'm trying to say. You're
competing with Bangladesh in the textile industry and then feeding Bangladesh more cotton and cotton
ये बेवकूफियां तो चल रही है ना यहाँ पे।
Why is Bangladesh and Vietnam beating us? Because they have favorable trade agreements with Britain and US, which India is not given because of whatever Bangladesh or Vietnam.
See, India को ऑफर भी किया था, इंडिया ने लिया नहीं। कई हमारे भी यहाँ पे बहुत बेवकूफियां तो हुई हैं ओवर द सेंचुरीज, ठीक है, छोड़ दो उसको। Anyhow, but that is a different story. But yeah, I mean, my point is that this currency weakening also, by the way, has a significant role to play.
Absolutely.
In inflation rate, especially fuel pricing पे तो बहुत बड़ा problem होता है ये। Pakistan is becoming a classic example of that right now.
Yeah. No, the toy thing really.
पाकिस्तानी जो अपने रुपये में करेंसी दिखाते हैं और फिर इंडियन करेंसी को मतलब बेसिकली वो अपने रुपये में कन्वर्ट करके दिखाते हैं, बोलते हैं देखो हमारा पेट्रोल सस्ता है इंडिया से। उनकी सरकारें ये उनके जो निजामी है वो तमाशा कर रहा है आजकल, just to show everything is probably fine. But it's a totally different story. So basically, one Pakistan rupee right now is more like one Indian rupee is more than 2.5 Pakistani rupee right now, something like that.
Okay.
बहुत बुरा हाल है। श्रीलंका
ये सब इतना चल रहा है। Was Sri Lanka always more vulnerable than Pakistan to have? तो श्रीलंका में ये स्थिति पहुंच गई है।
पाकिस्तान was also very vulnerable शुरू से ही for a variety of reasons. Actually,
श्रीलंका was more vulnerable than Pakistan.
पाकिस्तान और श्रीलंका दोनों का सेम ही रीजन से प्रॉब्लम हुआ है।
पाकिस्तान has a good MSME, terrorism, छोटा मोटा गन्स, वेपन्स सारा चलता है उनका।
यार वो एक्सपोर्ट पब्लिकली नहीं दिखा सकते ना, प्रॉब्लम ये है। Those services are not shown on the budget GDP काउंटिंग होती है।
Currency manipulation है
तो वही ना, they have their own MSME in the form of terrorism. All the GCC countries are.
वो तो MSME तो हमारे यहाँ वेस्टर्न बांग्लादेश जो हमारे देश के अंदर उसमें भी है ना।
हाँ तो वो चल रहा है। Don't undermine Kerala.
On a more serious note, one of the biggest cripplers of the Pakistani economy and of Sri Lanka also, in fact, has been the energy sector.
Yeah, true. And the Chinese have a hand to.
बहुत बड़ा रोल था। See what happened apparently, and this is what I learned on the job because I worked briefly on South Asia domains. Apparently Pakistan जब 80s में expand कर रहा था अपने energy grid को, they had the choice that they could either go for coal or they would go for gas and oil for their power stations. Oil पे भी चलते by the way power stations दुनिया में.
हाँ, Iran is nearby, no? It makes sense.
ईरान भी नहीं, अपने उनको लगा हमारे पास जो नेचुरल गैस है वो सफिशिएंट हो जाएगी.
हाँ.
No. Basically, it was an overestimation of the reserves. जो बांग्लादेश ने भी गलती करी, but they were smart enough to buy power from India चुपचाप.
इंडिया, नेपाल एंड ऑल तो वो तो इंटरनली चल रहा है.
बांग्लादेश की इकोनॉमी जो है ना इंडिया पावर पे चलती है, वो जितनी मर्जी छलांगे मार ले, they have higher GDP because of us. ठीक है ना? We are selling power. वो अलग बात है, हमारे यहाँ पे हम महंगी बेच रहे हैं, नेपाल को भी हम महंगी बेच रहे हैं, बट दोनों कंट्री चली इंडियन पावर पे रही है इस समय.
हाँ,
ये जितना they can claim whatever they want to. That's another story. Anyway, so because of this massive investment gets sunk in power plants, right? वो फंस गए, गैस ही नहीं. Gas ran out faster than they imagined.
Then they went
गैस
to
इंपोर्ट
nuclear.
करने के बिल शुरू, ऑयल इंपोर्ट करने के बिल शुरू. वो तो उनके तो मतलब उनके तो क्या बोलूं मैं, उनकी ईंट से ईंट बच गई इस प्रोसेस में. लोन
they're not defaulting it like Sri Lanka. Will that happen?
नहीं, डिफॉल्ट क्या करते हैं, ये पता है क्या करते हैं पाकिस्तान में? सऊदी से पैसा लेके आईएमएफ को देते हैं.
जो बेचारे श्रीलंका के पास
डेट प्रॉब्लम,
दो
क्लासिक सर्कुलर डेट प्रॉब्लम.
2 क्रेडिट कार्ड वाला.
फिर वो आईएमएफ से पैसा लेके सऊदी को दे देंगे वापस,
चाइना से लेके फिर सऊदी को दे देंगे.
This is literally what they've been running their economy on for the last 30 years.
A large part of those years were तो US से वो war on terrorism का
60% of their budget right now is interest payments. But it was a country that it is a disaster for the.
So that brings us to an interesting point कि ये जो inflation बढ़ रहा है और मतलब recession की हम बात कर रहे हैं, are we going to see a lot more countries facing what Sri Lanka is facing today?
No,
I'm on the verge of it.
No, there are two things which I want to point out. I was having this discussion in the office as well. Each time there is a recession or an inflation or anything like that, many governments fall.
Yeah,
many governments fall. Even
many prime ministers have to run away, like Sri Lanka presidents have to run away from the house.
I mean, right now, if you look at the number of presidents who have fallen, one is Israel, then there is UK, then there is our Sri Lankan, then our Japanese for some.
Only
some
president who never fell despite inflation, by the way, is Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe.
Well, he is a dictator. So.
Despite the $1,000,000% in 100,000% inflation rate touching,
wow.
You know, इतना बुरा हाल था जिम्बाब्वे में. Bread prices used to change 3 times a day. Bus fares used to change 3 times a day.
But even the
people were having quintuplions, quadruplions. पता नहीं कितना money लेके घूमते थे. बोरियों में लेके घूम रहे थे. Worthless. Morning में निकाला, evening में worthless.
But the kind of democracy also changes, no? Each time there is an inflation, each time towards the inflation, it is what you say, a liberal government, and post-inflation, it is a very right-wing.
Mugabe was a right-wing person, na? उसने सारे गोरों को बाहर फेंक दिया था.
No, inflation has an impact on ideology is also what I'm saying.
Yeah.
See, on the mass ideology that, but another failure what I see is within India states. Okay, you have a communist state like Kerala which is failing. There is a, I mean, even Punjab is right now under.
केजरीवाल साहब का चमत्कार देखा है किसी ने? दिल्ली में बिजली अब मुफ्त नहीं है भाई दर में.
बाकी हर जगह मुफ्त करवा रहे हैं.
पंजाब में मुफ्त हो गई है बस.
और गुजरात में बोल रहे हैं करवा देंगे.
वो बोल रहे हमें नहीं चाहिए, वो फिर भी बोल रहे देंगे तुम्हें.
क्यों नहीं चाहिए भाई? मिल रही है, दे रहे तो क्यों नहीं चाहिए? बट लोगों को चाहिए नहीं.
This is the problem. People think free का लेंगे तो कुछ भी कोई भी ले लेगा चुपचाप. Attitude has to stop somewhere.
No, my question is, will the central government come to rescue the state governments of the opposing party?
नहीं करना पड़ेगा यार. See,
वो फेडरल है ना, वो ग्रांट जाता है, टैक्स ग्रांट जाता है, रेवेन्यू ग्रांट जाता है, वो सब सिस्टम में देते हैं.
अच्छा, you guys might know of FRBM Act, right? Fiscal Responsibility Budgetary Management Act. Every state is bound by it, by the way.
No, every state is bound by it.
नहीं, और उसमें क्या होता है, अगर डिफॉल्ट की सिचुएशन आ रही है, the state government will borrow money from the center.
तो सेंटर के पास पैसे होना चाहिए ना.
नहीं तो सेंटर के पास तो वो दिस इज द प्रॉब्लम ना, वो सोचते हैं सेंटर अपनी जेब झाड़ेगा, पैसे निकल आएंगे हर बार।
अनलेस सेंटर बैंकरप्ट ना हो जाए, या मतलब 8-10 स्टेट ना मांगने लग जाए उनसे कि सेंटर बोले भाई
फिर
हमारे
ये
पास
बोलते
तो
हैं
पैसा ही
हमें
नहीं था,
टैक्स नहीं करने
तो
देते। दिस इज
स्टेट
द
लाइक
प्रॉब्लम।
केरला एंड पंजाब विल बी बेल्ड आउट अनलेस दे वर
अच्छा,
इंडिपेंडेंट
ये
स्टेट,
जो
देन दे वुड बी
ये
फेसिंग
छलांगे
certain
मारते
tough
हैं ना कई
situations.
स्टेट गम ऑपोजिशन पार्टीज वाले भी, बीजेपी को तो छोड़ ही दो, वो तो वैसे ही, आई डोंट वांट टू टॉक अबाउट द जोकर्स। ये ऑपोजिशन वाले भी जो है ना, छलांगे मारते हैं कि हमारी टैक्स, हमारे ये जो फिस्कल फ्रीडम थी छीन ली हमसे, ये वो। और
Because of the
बैंड
fact,
दे टको, जब तुम्हारे पास थी तब तुमने कौन सी स्टेट बजट का चमत्कार कर दिया
अरे
था?
नहीं, ये तो बस पॉलिटिकल रेटोरिक है.
हाँ,
देयर
ये
आर
पॉलिटिकल
मेनी
रिटॉरिक।
स्टोरीज.
एंड
इवन
माय प्रॉब्लम इज, सुमित, डोंट माइंड द फाइनेंशियल वर्ल्ड के जो बिजनेस लोग हैं, वो इस तरह की चुतियापंथी को कवर करते हैं.
नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं.
They don't even bother to check what has happened in the past before
I'll
saying
tell
this kind of
you,
nonsense.
and if you look, I could probably search for it. We did a story after Kerala's Thomas जो था, so finance minister, repeatedly kept saying कि भाई मुझे हमें हमारा वही ऑटोनॉमी छीन दिया, हम टैक्स नहीं लगा पा रहे हैं. तो we did an analysis of कि वैट के टाइम पे इन सब स्टेट, सारे स्टेट्स का what was the average growth of revenue year on year for 3-4 years in a row. It was less than 10%, right? 8-9%. Kerala was lower. Some of the other emerging states were higher, right? Some of the states that had lower base, and MP, for example, MP was doing really well at that time on its own.
MP has been a surprise performer every time. Let's just put it this way.
So on an average, it was less than 10%. I don't exactly remember what the figure was. And in GST, they are guaranteed what? 14% hike. So they are getting 14% year on year in revenue growth. So ये सब complete, I think not even an iota of truth in it. It's 100% political rhetoric कि हमारा autonomy, तुम्हारे autonomy गया है, तुमको 14% कब मिल रहा था भाई? तुम अपने से जब administrate कर रहे थे अपने tax.
अभी तेलंगाना वाला रो रहा है. Who asked Telangana to get a 22,000 crore rupee debt?
No, my question is, why none of the journalists, I mean, for all their infographics, जो भी है, I mean, like what Sumit just now explained, rhetoric is going on a political side, agree. But these guys also should come out as, the fourth estate to tell the people. I mean, I haven't seen a report other than saying that Niti Aayog has come up with numbers where they're saying state will collapse. Some study has shown that the states will collapse, but no reporter or no
तुम तो journalist को blame कर रहे हो. I have seen like supposed economists talking the same shit.
तो वही ना, तो
I kid you not, I've seen economists talking the same shit.
One Raghuram Rajan video is circulating on NDTV is saying, I mean, it's a clip on Twitter, which is saying that India should not be industrialized, should not go the industrial path.
अरे he's finding to be the Manmohan.
He wants India to be like Malaysia and Philippines. ठीक है, जहाँ पे he wants India to be like Philippines and Malaysia, where poverty extremes are high.
I mean, so much.
This is the joker. These are the jokers that we have in this country.
Nee, there is so much scope for non-political, purely number-based reportage, which nobody is. It's a gold mine which nobody is going to. Is not doing.
Nobody wants
to do it seriously. There are stories in business papers. They don't get played up so much. They might even appear on front page. They're there. But one story that appears today in a week, say suppose somebody is done, but day in day out you're bombarded with all these rhetoric all the time, so that story gets sort of lost in the din of everything. So
and it's the same case with inflation. Economists don't get inflation, for heaven's sake. See, I understand specialized लोग होते हैं macroeconomics के जो inflation के बारे में बात करते हैं, but even those supposed macroeconomists don't get inflation. Okay. I agree with Sumit's assessment कि चलो these are things that are not so easy to, probably, how do I say?
It's like feelings. It's like feelings.
Basically, उसको predict करना बहुत मुश्किल है, क्या होगा, कैसे होगा. And I'll give you, but इसमें diversion और dichotomy कितनी ज़्यादा है मैं बताता हूँ. Professor Arvind Dholakia, I think, IIM Ahmedabad के थे. He has been the biggest votary of doing away entirely with inflation targeting for the longest time now. वो बोलते हैं RBI की approach बकवास है. And you know what he says is a country that is developing like India can definitely absorb double-digit inflation. He's probably getting proven right now in some ways.
No,
It's not
this is-
easy. I'm not saying
but
anybody.
your-
Nobody
Yeah,
is having an
that's
easy
one way
lifetime.
to look
But
at it. That
maybe he's,
that's
because he's
basically
saying कि economic growth के लिए inflation जरूरी है. He's very categorical on that.
within a
It
band,
will-
but
And he's
you
always
claim to
quoted
be,
the example of Brazil's golden era for that. Brazil
but
में
you're
10-12%
fiscally
रहती
conservative.
थी,
You can't
लेकिन
be
Brazil
happy
के
with
golden
high
era में it
inflation.
grew before these Silvas and Dilma Rousseff वगैरह came and destroyed the economy.
That's what I'm saying. Each time the inflation goes up, it becomes a liberal government. Once liberal, then it becomes a conservative one.
Just to
Same thing
just to
happened in
prove,
Argentina.
yeah.
ये लोगों को ये देखो इकोनॉमिक समझाना आसान नहीं होता है, अलग स्टोरी है वो.
But
these kind of
but
things
high
are,
inflation का ये है,
the
suppose
ability to cushion people,
Yeah.
and this is the problem, right, Sumit? The ability to cushion people never comes out very clearly in any strategy.
True, absolutely. I just shared this story on WhatsApp, our group. So I'll just read out the first paragraph just to give Harish a perspective as to how these stories do come on the front pages. It is from 2018, and the first paragraph is: it may appear that the goods and services taxes hasn't given a big boost to state government tax revenue, or for that matter, the center so far. But there's little reason for them to complain. The constitutionally guaranteed compensation mechanism under GST ensures, in effect, a 14% annual growth in state revenue. A cursory look at their past performance will reveal that most states had previously registered growth rates much lower than 14% from the taxes that later collapsed into GST. So essentially what I was saying, that their own performance during that time was much lower than 14%. They were guaranteed 14%. One of the reason why everybody agreed, and 14% was considered too high even at that time. So I mean, just to dovetail the point about political rhetoric, and how that sort of overshadows a lot of sensible reporting that goes on a daily basis by a lot of newspaper also, that sometimes there's a chart in the story presented how their revenue. Tamil Nadu was growing at 6-7% in 15, 16 with 2%, 17 may again around 7%. Same with Karnataka. Karnataka went up to 12, but was 8 and 10. So what GST guaranteed them was much higher than they had been getting in the last 3 years before GST's implementation. So it's purely rhetorical that they're saying, and even and the contradictory story does appear in newspapers, but in the din of all of this, that sometimes gets overshadowed or lost and that kind of stuff.
Like you said, there's too much information to process, and the ones that are very juicy might be the wrong ones.
Yeah, exactly. So
the toys thing really threw me off. That kids have been denying toys, and you'll have to deal with substandard Indian toys or good quality Indian toys for that matter, which are
I mean, as I said, if toys are not manufactured by NTPC and SAIL, and it is widespread, and there are lots of clusters in India who are competing among each other, then maybe we'll get quality. Who knows? I mean, India is a huge market, so to attract that market, to get that revenue, you'll have to be competitive. But if government gets into toy production, then we'll only be buying, Hindustan Motors or this or that Ambassador is the only car that is available. So there is this, and if this is a success story, the toy thing, that we've cut down on imports substantially, we have increased exports heavily. If that is a success story, then maybe that Arvind Panagariya's point about free trade, when China can manipulate you, can completely snow you under an avalanche because of all the duties and all the incentives they provide their own industry. Indian industry will never compete. So maybe a little bit of protectionism at this point of time in selected sectors, a calibrated approach, so to say, instead of a dogmatic, पूरा हर across the board हम या तो यही apply करेंगे या तो वही apply करेंगे. Maybe piecemeal approach, case by case is perhaps the best way to go about it.
Item by item.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it's just one of those situations that when you look at it more carefully, there are never any correct answers, right? वही बात तो हुई ना. Nothing is right or wrong.
True,
You
absolutely.
just have to figure out what works for you. And
Case by case.
Case by case. And my problem is that there are a lot of supposed experts who are talking absolute rubbish right now in India as well. Either they're going to the extreme end ki sab kuch protectionist kar do. I don't want to take a name. My wife was pointing out to a very relatively eminent economist in Delhi policy circles, who's been involved with high-tech trainings for the Ministry of External Affairs as well. And उसने किताब लिखी है, and he's trying to actually argue that India was better before liberalization than after liberalization. ठीक है?
Can we argue that liberalization worked at the time that it did, and maybe now it's time to change tracks because of the time that we are living.
You know what?
Instead
People
of
tell
being
me
dogmatic,
this. You know, Indira Gandhi के time पे inflation rate.
Yeah, inflation rate, tax rate, yeah.
By the way, people don't realize how things roll. ठीक है? That inflation rate had actually followed the 1971 war.
Yeah.
People don't realize the correlation and how it works out.
Wars are essential.
War kar lo, but war is an expensive business, huh? Because war generates demand. War generates serious demand. In fact, you know who was the first person to realize this and say it?
No.
Guess karo. John Maynard Keynes.
Indian economics. नहीं उसका तो एक famous I think he had written a book कि अगर इकोनॉमी अगर सोच कर रही है तो वॉर करवा लो तो
that is America.
He literally wrote that in a book and Americans picked it up. Britain thought it could, but Britain was destroyed after the war. तो नहीं कर पाया.
But Britain was short on resources. America has resources.
But you see what war does, and America by fueling the Ukraine war right now is creating its own grave.
Yeah, what should have been exactly opposite
in the economic front. उनको दिमाग नहीं दिख रहा, उनको दिमाग नहीं चल रहा दिख रहा है कि क्या कर रहे हो अपने लिए.
Russian economy is growing stronger for some weird reason.
Exactly.
The ruble is strongest.
Germany will, if these buggers think that the Germans will give up on Russian gas, are they mad or what?
True.
I don't know.
So this inflation is going to swallow a lot of these countries. Sri Lanka is currently facing it. वो जो एक गाना था ना, महंगाई डायन खाए जाते हैं. So this is what.
अरे वही है, महंगाई उनकी डायन है.
So
it's a heavy subject.
Heavy subject and something that I mean, I don't think historically even, and there have been any answers to how there's just textbook theories, but in real terms, it doesn't always go according to the laid out theories or whatever is in the economics textbook. But we
there are too many tentacles to this octopus, na?
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's see how many of these, in the dominoes.
Our predictions might come true.
I mean, it's going to take a toll on human lives. And
now is that we'll see a sustained period of inflation for another 6 months.
Another 6 months. Okay.
उसके पहले तो कुछ नहीं होता.
And in those 6 months, a lot of these countries like Sri Lanka are going to topple over. You think so?
वो तो somebody had shared this meme on Instagram that a person I follow. कि Dr. Jaishankar, please take the instrument of accession with you for your next trip to Sri Lanka. Sorry guys.
No,
very
you
poor
can,
joke going on in India these days.
No, you can start with a Guantanamo Bay kind of deal with Sri Lanka. Now that Jaffna is free of all these terrorists and whatever LTT, India can just build a base there. From Jaffna, just go little by little, salami thing. Take little bit more, and until Colombo, and say now this is India, extended India.
Yeah, there's also apart from this Jaishankar's instrument accession joke, there's another joke, no, that sometime in 50s, 60s, whenever Stalin was when Stalin was there in Russia, some Indian ambassador was showing him the map of India or whatever, and he noticed Sri Lanka. He said, "What is this?" The ambassador apparently said that this is a separate country, Sri Lanka. And Stalin said, why?
And he
Why
started
is there
laughing. Now,
separate country?
apparently, Sri Lanka is a separate country. He started laughing.
Yeah. Why
By the
so?
way, that reminds me, there's a fantastic book called Islanded that was written by, I think, Sumant Subramaniam or Rahul Subramaniam. I'll share the details if interested. On on this period of Sri Lankan history and how it was actually shown as a separate country from India. How the British did this project to make it a separate country from India altogether by creating a separate identity. It's a very fascinating read. कभी किसी को time मिले तो I would strongly recommend it. थोड़ी wordy book है, but it's a fascinating read in that
So
subject.
in a way, it is good that
So
Sri Lanka was
that's my
separate from
recommendation.
India. They have
Yeah,
preserved their
well,
own
in
culture.
many ways, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
true. At
true.
least they did not
Right.
kill their culture like us.
Others, you saw what happened in Lakshadweep and all. No? There are no Hindus. There's no Hindus.
लक्षद्वीप का तो
True,
केस ही
absolutely.
अलग है यार, कभी उसके बारे में आराम से बात
Yeah.
करेंगे.
No,
It's a
I'm
very
saying
Anyway, so yeah, this
it's Lakshadweep is an accident in history essentially, और कुछ नहीं.
maybe.
No, yeah,
Anyway.
that's a topic for another one of our episodes.
Yeah.
As for inflation and where it takes us in the months to come, you predicted 6 months more. Let's see how many more countries topple over. I wouldn't mind if a certain Western neighbor of ours topples over like Sri Lanka does. I mean, a lot of us won't
Yeah,
mind it.
I agree. नहीं, वो तो वैसे ही चल ही रहा है ना, उनके तो चल ही रहा है ना इस समय.
बट वो ऐसे ही चलते चलते फिर वो मतलब गाड़ी उनकी
अब नहीं
इधर उधर
लगता.
होते
Honestly, this time I don't think it will happen.
keep going on.
Yeah. This time it
Yeah,
won't
so-
happen. I'm pretty sure of that. वो गाड़ी अपनी stable होने वाली. That I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so we are on
And
Twitter
by the
now.
way, guys, just to before Sumit ends this, we have a Twitter handle of our own now. It's drinks fries DNF being capital. So
I
please
think
follow us so
you
that you
have
get the
to-
latest updates. And I'll ensure that Sumit talks more and more every time on his subject. This time, as a complaint aa rahi thi.
You'll have to repeat
Sumit,
the Twitter
closing
handle again.
remarks.
Yeah,
You
it's
got-
Our
at,
Twitter handle is drinks friends.
Drink Friends at Drink Friends on Twitter. You can find us, and yeah, we'll just wrap up this episode. Take up Lakshadweep maybe sometime later. So I mean, there's no better phrase than the Mehangayi Dayan मारे खाए जाते हैं. तो श्रीलंका तो गई. अब देखते हैं आगे कहाँ क्या क्या होता है. Although this is they've been using it, no? I think Congress has been using this phrase to target whatever the dispensation. Mehangayi Dayan. Although we've not even reached some of the levels that we were before 2014 in the 3-4 years leading up to 2014. But that's all political rhetoric, as we saw in GST.
Well, at least our prime minister right now is not blaming people for demanding more. That's the saving grace, unlike Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, we'll leave it here and hope you enjoyed the inflation, which is in a mystery in itself. Trying to decode it and pack as much as we could. Hopefully, we'll come up with another interesting topic in the next week, and we'll see you then.